being able to have topics of conversation concerning what the Oscars really show us about what's going on in the world today would be really fascinating and kind of an extra edge on not just watching the Oscars and all that, but actually engaging with the Oscars and seeing what the Oscars, you know, the selections mean about us and what it means about our culture today. Brian Coley is the best person to have in a room at a party like this because he is brilliant, and he has been watching the Oscars for years like a hawk, and each year he looks through all the nominations and he has this theory, he has this practice of seeing where culture is headed based on the nominations for the Oscars. And why don't you tell people about how you got into that and a little bit about how we're going to play around with that tonight.
And this is Justice, by the way.
Oh, yes, my name is Justice Stout. While he's working on that, my name is Justice Stout. I run an organization called Renew the Arts based in Atlanta here. And one of the main things that we're trying to do is move the conversation around arts to being less about moving the ball more from a consumerism approach to arts and entertainment to a collaborative and productive approach to arts and entertainment. So one of the things we really try to do is reinvigorate the practice of patronage in the arts. So if that interests you, you can definitely talk to me. But back to Brian. Renew the Arts is really passionate about
Okay, want me to go with this? All right.
Good? Good. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Brian Coley. As Justice was saying, I just love looking at the Oscars, and to answer your question, it all kind of started, I run a company called Real Experiences, and the cool thing I get to do for my day job is that we take people's top 10 movies and we find their story buried within their movies. How many of you guys have seen National Treasure? Anybody? Oh, come on. Okay, so you know that Nicolas Cage finds out that underneath the Declaration of Independence is exactly a map, a treasure map. It's been hidden there all these years up underneath their noses. And so Nicolas Cage does what I would not recommend. He steals the Declaration of Independence, and then he finds these cool glasses that supposedly Benjamin Franklin had to read the map with these different lenses. And that sends them on a cool journey to find some, oh, spoiler alert, national treasure.
It's not a spoiler anymore.
Yeah, that's been hidden all these years. And so that's really what we do at Real. We just believe up underneath your noses buried within your top 10 movies is your story. And all we do is just get different lenses to kind of read the map that's buried in there of your story. So this has been my company, and when we do this for individuals, we've never seen a top 10 list be the same. And so it's been really interesting because all of a sudden you'll get this massive insight, and it'll be from Anchorman or something like that, you know, just unexpected places. And so I decided, could I try the same idea from a micro level with individuals, with a macro level with our movies as a country, right? Like, what could it actually be telling our cultural story if we looked at the movies that actually were leading our culture? So that's where it kind of started, and ultimately I just started looking at the Oscars and realizing they were telling us where we were headed, not just where we are, but where we were headed. So that's kind of how it started.
Now, why is it the case that the Oscars are particularly important for this? Like, wouldn't the box office be a better, I don't know,
right,
picture of where we're going than
it seems like it would, like the box office is, you know, what's most popular. But in reality, if you think about it, the Oscars is the only place in which artists are doing their work without commerce being involved. So most of the time, the studios allow for a film to actually be nominated, you know, for the Oscars, and they don't care if it makes money, and obviously a lot of people don't see the Oscar movies, right? And so ultimately what we find is that when you take out commerce, then usually an artist is trying to say something, right? And we're pulling together the best artists of our time, right? These are the best writers, the best directors, and they're doing their passion project. So ultimately, if you're doing your passion project, you're the best artist, and if an artist is usually the prophet, then isn't it trying to tell us where we're headed as far as our culture is concerned? So that's kind of the premise of just taking out the commerce. Now, I'm a person of faith, and as a person of faith, I just believe there's even a bigger thing going on where I believe God's kind of orchestrating this collection of films that are put together each year that ultimately He's trying to speak to us and tell us this is where our story is headed.
That's kind of odd as a person of faith, because a lot of times Christians view Hollywood with a lot of skepticism
Right.
and animosity. So it's kind of strange as a Christian to say that God might be speaking through Hollywood.
Right. Well, if you think about it, I think God has always been interested. First of all, I think He loves this industry. So I want to say that first. And then second of all, I think He loves it because they speak His language. And so I think God has always been about metaphor and imagery and story. And so ultimately, if that's what He's always been about, then why would He still not be speaking in that language? And if you know anything about God, He usually turns out to speak in things that we think are profane, and then He goes, no, I'm okay with that. I want Anchorman to give you your insight, So anyway, yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. So tell us a little bit more about how this has, come about and what it's been like.
So I'll kind of walk you through. I've been doing this for 7 years, so I want to just kind of show you quickly, as quick as I can, how the Oscars have been kind of foreshadowing our story as a country. So in 2014, the question that came out of the Oscars, so what I do is I look at the Oscar nominees, so you can see all the Oscar nominees in 2014, and I'll look at it and see what are the common themes, what are the common questions that each of the movies are trying to say. So in 2014, the movie 12 Years a Slave won, and in that year it said that, we will survive when will we survive when the affluent life we know and the freedoms we enjoy are violently stripped away from us. And if you know anything about that story, that is kind of that story. So that was the question that year. In 2015, Birdman won. And it was basically the question, as a washed-up former superhero, will we overcome our institutions, will we overcome our insecurities, it's hard to read backwards, will we overcome our insecurities to mount a successful comeback? And then lastly, Spotlight won in 2016, will we take down our most revered institution for the sake of our home? These were the questions that were being asked, and let me just kind of bullet point them. So the first one was get back to the life we knew. The second one was become great again. And then the third one was overturn the establishment. Does anybody know what the yellow line is? The election. Does that sound familiar at all? Get back to the life we knew, become great again, and overturn the establishment. So in reality, the Oscars, believe it or not, were paving the way for someone like Donald Trump to come along, who was about, we were asking these questions as a country. Now don't hear me, don't go out of the room and go, this guy said that Donald Trump, was elected by God, through the Oscars. Don't say that. All I'm saying is that God is very interested in our story, and He foreshadows what's going on in our stories through the Oscars.
And hang on, so you're saying, whenever the Oscars, when you were considering the Oscar nominations in 2015, that's when you selected the theme of Become Great Again?
That's correct. So that was not...
That was before Trump's...
I didn't know his logo or anything like that. So that was literally, if you know Birdman, I'm not making things up. Anybody who knows Birdman, did anybody see it? It's about will he become great again? Like he's going back and trying to mount a comeback on the stage and trying to see if he'll become great again, as an actor. So it wasn't, like anything that I'm trying to make up.
You're not backwards engineering this?
No, that's
incredible.
engineering it. So that's before the election. And then post-election, obviously we had a whole lot of us versus them, a whole lot of division in our country. And I think, personally, as a person of faith, I think God was very involved in that moment to say, I'm going to switch the question now. Because most of the films before the election was, will we survive? And if it was after, the economic crash and stuff like that, that was really what we were asking. Will we survive as a country, make a comeback, all that kind of stuff. But after the election, the question started changing with the nominees. And the question became this new question of, will we be a we? Which if you think about it, how providential is that? That God wanted us to wrestle with, will we be a we, with all these movies that were coming out. So in 2017, the answer to that, when Moonlight won, was can we get a proper perspective of the past to shape our present and future? In 2018, Shape of Water won, and will we allow women to step into their agency and provoke change, and can we control our words, both spoken and unspoken? And then last year, Green Book won, can we get out of our isolated world and break down the barriers that separate us and distributing power? So basically, the first step is to will we be a we? This is almost like a three-step process for us, is to revisit our past. And that specifically was revisiting the past and looking at the sins of our past, getting a proper narrative of our past. All those movies were dealing with that. And then second of all, allowing women to be change agents and understanding the power of our words. And then lastly, in 2019, is what I call power to the other people, in which it was really trying to break down these barriers that separate us and allow power to be distributed. So that's since 2000, the last 3 years. So, a lot of people are like, well, do you see this happening in culture? What's happening in culture?
Yeah, how does this actually pan out once you've looked at these things
Exactly.
throughout the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I want to go back to 2017. So in 2017, like I said, the question that was being asked was, will we deal with our past? Can we go back and look at if we're going to be a we have to go back and look at the past and look at a proper narrative, a proper story of our past, and look at the sins of our past. And so 2 months after the Oscars, and that was the themes of those movies, and I gave this speech actually, that year, and 2 months later, Charlottesville happened, in which we were going back and looking at our narrative, and the statues in our communities and saying, is this our narrative? And looking at the sins of